Hey everyone, and welcome. So if you've ever set up a crypto wallet, you know the drill. You get a list of 12 or 24 words, these so-called magic words, and you're told to guard them with your life. But have you ever stopped and wondered, how does that actually work? Well, today we're going to dive deep and uncover the secret journey those words take to secure your digital fortune. I mean, think about it. It seems kind of crazy, right? How can a dozen simple common words like army, van, garbage, or echo possibly be strong enough to protect thousands or even millions of dollars? Well, that's the big question we're going to crack wide open in this explainer. And believe me, the answer is way more fascinating than you might think. So here's our roadmap for the journey. We're going to start with those words we're all familiar with. Then we'll pull back the curtain on the secret ingredient that gives them all their power. After that, we'll see how they're forged into a master key, figure out just how much security that really gives you, and wrap it all up with how you can best protect your own digital fortune.
All right, section 1. Let's start on familiar ground, with the part of this process we've all seen when setting up a new wallet.
Yep, these words. Your recovery phrase, your seed phrase, whatever you want to call it. They're your one and only backup plan. But here's the first big secret of our journey. The words themselves aren't actually the magic. They're just a user-friendly disguise for something way more powerful and a whole lot more random. So it's time to pull back that disguise and get a look at the true foundation of your wallet's security. It all comes down to one core concept, something called entropy. Okay, so here's the absolute key takeaway. Your wallet doesn't really start with words at all. It starts by generating a massive, truly random number, a long string of ones and zeros. That is your entropy. For a 12-word phrase, you get a 128-bit number. For 24 words, it's 256 bits. Your recovery phrase is just a clever, human-readable way to write down that gigantic random number. The words are just a pointer. They're not the secret itself. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. That entropy, which your words represent, gets taken into what you can think of as a digital forge. This is where it's hammered, heated, and shaped into your final master key, also known as the seed. This digital forge is a specific function called PBKDF2, and you can think of it like a recipe. It needs two main ingredients. The first is your entropy, that huge random number from your words. The second is something called a salt, which by default is just the word mnemonic. Then the recipe calls for putting these two ingredients through 2,048 rounds of intense cryptographic mixing, or hashing. And the final output? A super strong 512-bit master seed. This seed is the single thing that generates every single address and private key in your entire wallet. Let's see this in action with a real example. Okay, so we take these 12 words, which stand in for 128 bits of entropy, we feed them into the forge with no passphrase, and boom, out comes the result, a totally unique 512-bit seed. That's that long string of letters and numbers you see right there at the bottom. Okay, now we're going to use the exact same 12 words, not changing a single one. But this time, we're going to add one tiny secret ingredient into the mix, a passphrase. This is where the real magic happens. You remember that salt ingredient from our recipe a second ago? Well, without a passphrase, it's always just the word mnemonic. But when you add a passphrase, in this case, super duper secret, it gets tacked right onto the salt. This fundamentally changes one of the core ingredients in the recipe. And if you change a core ingredient, you don't just get a slightly different result, you get a completely different dish. It creates an entirely new, totally unique, and completely unrelated wallet. And here's the proof. Same 12 words as before. Army, van, defense, you get the picture. But this time, with that passphrase added, just look at the resulting seed. It is completely, 100% different from the first one. This is so important to understand. A passphrase isn't just a password to unlock your wallet. It's like a secret 13th word that creates an entirely separate, hidden wallet. So all of this naturally leads to a really common question. Do I need 12 words or do I need 24? Is 1280 bits of entropy really going to be enough to protect me? To really get a feel for the security here, you just need to appreciate this one number, 2 to the power of 128. That's how many different keys an attacker would have to guess just to have a tiny chance of finding yours. It's a number so astronomically large, it's bigger than the estimated number of atoms in the entire known universe. In other words, guessing it is computationally impossible. It's just not going to happen. And this chart really drives the point home. You see, the actual security strength of a Bitcoin private key is, you guessed it, 128 bits. So when you generate a key from 128 bits of entropy, which is what you get from 12 words, you are perfectly matching the security level of the network itself. For stopping a direct brute force attack, any more than that doesn't really add more security. It's already unbreakable. So you might be asking, then why would anyone ever use 24 words? Well, it's not about stopping a direct guess from scratch. The real benefit is all about resilience. Imagine an attacker somehow got their hands on half of your 24-word phrase. They'd still be left with 12 unknown words, which is 128 bits of missing information. And as we just saw, that's impossible to guess. It protects you against partial leaks. And here's what that looks like in practice. You've got 24 words representing a whopping 256 bits of entropy. Those get fed through the same digital forge, and out pops a unique 512-bit seed. More words means more initial randomness, which means more resilience if some of those words are ever compromised. Okay, we've been on quite a journey here, huh? From simple words all the way to cryptographic forges. So let's bring it all home and distill this down to the most important takeaways for actually protecting your assets.
Okay, here's what you really need to remember. First, your words are just a handy way to represent the real secret, which is a giant random number called entropy. Second, that entropy gets put through a digital forge to create your master seed. Third, and this is huge, adding a passphrase completely changes the ingredients, which creates a totally new wallet. That makes a passphrase your single most powerful security upgrade, period. And finally, don't lose sleep worrying that 12 words is too weak. 128-bit security is more than enough to stop any brute force attack dead in its tracks. So there you have it. We've officially pulled back the curtain on the secret journey of your recovery phrase. It's not magic. It's just some really brilliant cryptography. And that leaves us with one final question. And this one is for you. Now that you know how it all works, the entropy, the forging, and the incredible power of a passphrase, is your digital fortune truly secure?